How can I comment out files in the startup folder in Windows? How can I get Windows to ignore certain files in the startup folder? Simply put, I want to comment out files as one comments out lines of code, something that works like .gitignore, but for Windows. My situation. I am trying to get Windows to ignore some files in the startup folder and not execute them during startup. Due to certain reasons, I am reluctant to actually remove these files from the startup folder. Nesting these files inside another folder in the startup folder doesn't work, as then that folder opens up at startup. A workaround I have found is the marked answer here, but this does not work for shortcuts. If possible, I would prefer a solution which can be used to get other scripts to ignore files too.
A simple solution: right-click the shortcut, select Properties, and in the General tab set the shortcut to Hidden, then click OK. I have just tested it, and it works. A hidden shortcut is not used when booting. The folder I did it on was C: /users /username /appdata /roaming /Microsoft /Windows /start menu /programs /startup. To undo, in order to see in Explorer the hidden files, you need an View tab is greater than Options button is greater than View tab to set Show hidden files, folders and drives.
Just use the standard startup configuration tools. This used to be handled by msconfig, which used to have a startup tab where you could uncheck individual startup items to disable them. This goes way back to Windows XP at least, perhaps even 95 or 98. However, as Scott pointed out in the comments, running msconfig requires administrator rights. In Windows 8 and later, this got moved to the Task Manager, which got a startup tab for the same purpose. This move also made it available for non-administrators. Disabling an item here doesn't alter the link in the startup folder in any way. It just configures Windows not to run it via the registry.
I'm adding this answer for historic reasons. This was an unofficial convention often followed in the DOS, Windows 3.x days and for some time afterwards, for all sorts of keeping files but having them invisible, not only the startup menu. Overall idea: since Windows uses the file extension, 1, to determine how a file should be run, 2, changing this extension will prevent the file from being seen by the application responsible for that file type, 3. 1 equals this is the part of the file name after the last. Period. Up until Windows 95 this was limited to 3 characters. The extension is now hidden by default and e.g. File Explorer settings need to be changed to show it. Startup files have a .lnk, link, extension. 2 equals, or more technically, which program, application, executable should take a file of this extension to run with it as input. 3 equals programs, applications, executables are associated with files of a certain type, as determined from their extension. Under Settings, on my Windows 10 system, I open the Start menu, press the Windows key, then type Associates and choose Default Applications by file type. On the resulting dialog you will see the extension in the left column and the application in the right column. Still works though. Caveats. A. One will need to change settings, or work in the command line window, to see the file's extensions. B. This solution involves changing the file names, and potentially changing them back, once done. Convention. Their convention was to create a backup file, by replacing the file's extension with .back, for their historical 3-character limit. Since longer file names have been introduced on Windows, it is probably safer to preserve the original extension and simply appending .back, which makes it easier to remove later on without guesswork. Sometimes it is helpful to also add a timestamp, especially when creating multiple versions of the same file, e.g. back 20211022. Longer file name limits obviously allow one to use longer extensions, e.g. backup 31 May 2021, but lazy typists try to stay as short as possible, smiley face. It is nice to stay consistent though. Also remember that the ISO date format of YYYYMMDD sorts nicely with an alphabetical sort, as may be done in File Explorer or with DIR.
When I run Nearsoft Watton Startup, right-click a startup folder item and select Disable. It will create, inside the startup folder, a folder named Disabled with the hidden attribute set. I did not actually reboot my machine to verify this, but I can't imagine Nearsoft would have implemented it this way if Windows then actually opened that folder on startup.
If you want to stop it on, sincerely,